Hello everyone and welcome back to A Theater Near You. My name is Kris Randazzo and I'm joined this evening, as always, by unabashed poser Paul Giroux.
That's me.
And mimicking assassin Sean Doyle.
Who are you? Who am I? Who do we kill?
This is a bit of a bonus episode because we all saw Black Widow and we simply couldn't not discuss it. Was the long-awaited solo film worth the wait? Let's find out. But first, how are you, gentlemen?
Is this a bonus episode? Or is this just an alternate timeline where we decided that the next movie would be the new movie and not the movie that started with C?
No, we have to save that for our Loki episode.
And maybe this is last month's episode, and that's why we're doing the letter B. It all works out. I think Paul's right. Alternate timeline.
That's right. We're all variants.
Oh man, I have to tell you something as long as we're talking about being stuck on the letter B. So I should not
curious where this is going.
Oh, I should not have done this, but like every time it's time to record the podcast, usually Nate is coming upstairs to take a shower and like get ready for bed and stuff, and Sherry will read to him because I'm doing this. So we kind of have this moment where like we meet in the hallway and he like goes towards the bathroom and I go towards this little like guest bedroom office so that I could do the podcast. And so the last couple of times he's gotten real curious and he's like, "What are you doing in there?" And then I explained to him that it's a podcast and he's like, his like eyes lit up. He was like so excited because he's into like all this weird stuff now. He's into like making CDs and making tapes, and he's like, you can do a podcast. So like this time around, he asked me what the podcast was about, and I was like, it's about movies. And like, I was like, last time we did, Bill and Ted, and this time we're doing Black Widow. And he's like, I know you only do new movies, but maybe you could, and I was like, well, actually, we just go through the alphabet, and like next time we're doing the letter C. And he's like, before you move on to the letter C, you should do Boss Baby 2. And he's like, I'll watch it with you. And I was like, I'll bring it up.
In all fairness, I didn't see Boss Baby 1. Was it a great movie? I don't know. Maybe those cartoons are great.
I'm unfamiliar with Boss Baby.
I think it's Baldwin, isn't it?
Didn't somebody...
Isn't it Alec Baldwin doing the voice of the baby, and the baby's got to, I guess, be a boss? I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it is. I'm sure it's every bit as awful as you'd imagine it was.
Yeah, no, I thought it was like directed or written by somebody that I cared about, but no, it's definitely not. Yeah, that looks awful. I'm gonna go ahead and steer clear of that. Anyway, let's go over the basics here. Black Widow was released on July 9th, 2021, and was produced, obviously, by Marvel Studios and distributed by Disney. It was directed by Kate Shortland, who also directed the 2012 film Lore and the TV series The Secret Life of Us and 2017's Berlin Syndrome. The screenplay was written by Eric Pearson, whose other writing credits include the Agent Carter TV series and Thor Ragnarok. And the story was by Jack Schaefer and Ned Benson, whose writing credits include WandaVision, Olaf's Frozen Adventure, and the short film Yes. The movie is a long overdue solo film that tells the story of Black Widow's past and is set during/between the events of Civil War and Infinity War. So, this is an alternate timeline. Or bonus episode, whatever you want to call it. We also finished Loki the other night. Are you guys both caught up on Loki?
Oh yeah.
No, I haven't seen the last episode. So everything but the last episode.
Okay, drat. Then I'm not gonna dive into that. Not that like it was a big bombastic season finale, but it was a very interesting one.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
It was a lot less explodey than I expected, because, Marvel things tend to be very explodey towards the end.
Sure.
And this was less explodey than most Marvel things were in the end. It was really more talky and interesting, which I was totally into.
I know we're not here to talk about these TV shows, but these TV shows have been pretty cool, I think. Like, with Loki, I had the same experience that I had with WandaVision. Like, when it started, I was like, I don't know about this. Like, they both kind of started slow, but then... like once they sort of got to the spectacle of it, I was all in with both of them.
Yeah, me too. I've been just thoroughly enjoying the Disney Plus series. It's making the waits between Marvel movies feel more like comics. You know what I mean? Because you get a new iteration every month, basically, and these ones kind of you were getting something new every month for a while now, right? Like it was WandaVision was that back in March, April. Time has lost all meaning. I actually wrote all this down because I'm a nerd.
I did too because I'm a nerd, but I'm a forward-thinking nerd. I'm pretty sure we get 7 Marvel movies in 7 months, starting in September, which is freaking wild.
So WandaVision was pretty early, and then we had Falcon and Winter Soldier not long after that. Loki started in June. Black Widow happened in July. What If happens in August. Shang-Chi is September. And then we have Eternals in November and Spider-Man in December. And then Miss Marvel and Hawkeye series are also both slated for this year. So theoretically, it looks like we have, if like say Miss Marvel comes out in October, and who knows when Hawkeye is coming out, that's at least one Marvel thing a month for the rest of the year.
And when I said 7 for 7, I was including, and I don't know that I should, but I think I should. Venom comes out in, I think it's September or October.
Right.
And I think they're connected at this point, right?
I feel like it's honestly, no joke, it's probably an alternate timeline. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. Because they're being super coy about it, right? Because you've got what's his face? Batman's in there.
No, Batman is in. We shouldn't
Michael
call him Batman.
Keaton. Oh,
Michael
he's
Keaton
he's
in
in
Morbius.
right?
But Morbius was originally, that's a Sony product.
Yeah.
And it was originally supposed to be expanding the Venom verse.
Exactly. And then the Venomverse also had wasn't there like pictures of something Spider-Man related in the background?
Right, and then there was like Easter eggs in the trailer where you can see like on the newspaper it says Avengers. In the newspaper, so it's like they are being coy about it. Maybe that's what multiverse of madness or whatever that's coming.
Yeah,
is gonna...
I'm assuming this is some sort of multiversal thing. Like I just don't think this takes place in the same universe. But like ever since what's his face X-Men Quicksilver showed up on WandaVision,
but then he wasn't even supposed to be Quicksilver. He's supposed to be the neighbors, and it's just random. It's just random. Well, now you're just being a dick about it, Marvel.
That's what they've told us so far. But we also know that Marvel are freaking liars. So
well, with that Quicksilver thing on WandaVision, like that was the only way they were gonna throw a twist at you. You know, like that was the only way they were gonna keep you guessing was if that actor played Quicksilver. You know. What the hell was I gonna say? Yeah, just like. In trying to get back to talking about Black Widow and with sort of like talking about all these TV shows that we've had lately, like I feel like it's been so long since we've seen a Marvel movie, and these TV shows have been the only thing that have been like keeping us going for a while, that I feel like I forgot how to watch a Marvel movie. Like I forgot. Like, I don't know, like, it was an adjustment when I realized, like, oh, we were supposed to see this last year. Like, we were supposed to see this movie a year ago.
Yeah, it definitely felt, I mean, we'll get to a few more of our personal details in a minute, but it definitely felt weirdly out of place when I watched it. Even thinking of when it was originally supposed to come out, I feel like it's still weirdly out of place, but...
So that's like the as the credits started rolling before the end scene, I turned to Jacqueline and we basically said the exact same thing to each other. We were like, why the hell didn't this come out like right after Civil War, right before Avengers Endgame, or not Endgame, the first Infinity War or whatever. Mm. It was like this, it felt like that they wrote it, they were going to do it, they decided not to do it, and then people were like, no, do it, and they were like, all right, let's do it. You know what, we already wrote a good movie that we were going to do before, let's just do that one now. And then as me and Jacqueline were like, that's our main complaint about this movie, is why did it come out now? As we were saying that, they hit you with the end scene, which obviously could only happen after the end game.
No, I disagree.
And that felt like tacked on. Like, my first thought was, you put that on here just because everybody you tested this with was like, why is this coming out now? And you were like, we have to give a good reason why this came out now, so just put an end scene on that goes after everything.
But now imagine this actually did come out at that point, and that's the end scene. Now you're like, okay, who's the chick from Seinfeld? Mm-hmm. How did she die? And how is Clint responsible for her death? Now you got to sit on that until Endgame comes out. How cool would that have been?
Oh,
yeah, all right.
Oh, if this came out before awesome. Endgame?
Yeah, imagine if this movie actually came out when
because other
it
than
fits
that
in
last
continuity,
scene,
like after
Right.
after Civil War, right? Before Infinity War, before Endgame, before that just comes out, and this is how I intend to watch it going forward is after watching Civil War. Now that whole thing just becomes a really crazy setup. Like, all right, so at some point she's gonna die. Apparently Clint's responsible, and this woman's here. Like, and then she doesn't show up until you see her at the end of Falcon and Winter Soldier ages later. But even then, that's not that long later. As far as recurring characters in the MCU go, like, remember when Sif showed back up in Loki? Like, that was pretty cool. That was a hell of a callback. But I think that would have worked even cooler back then. So then we'd be just sitting there thinking the whole time, at some point she's going to get killed. When's it going to be? And how's it going to be Clint's fault? I think that would have been a really fun thing to be floating around in our heads.
Well, this Marvel Cinematic Universe is so massive at this point, and they have so many stars, even just playing minor characters, that's how they can interconnect all this stuff and sort of make these meaningful, cool moments between TV shows and movies. I mean, the WandaVision thing sort of hinged on that, that team of Monica Rambeau and Jimmy Woo and what's her face from the first two Thor movies, Darcy or whatever. That
was great work. Way to pull together some B characters that really just popped off well together.
Yeah, it was a cool team of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know if this had come out before Endgame with that ending, it would have. I mean, I guess it would have ruined the mystery of like what was going to happen on what was it called, Boromir, the like death world.
I think it's Vormir.
Vormir.
Kris, I don't know. I don't know if it would have ruined it or if Kris is right. It would have built up anticipation. You would have seen the two of them go in there together. You would be like, "Is this it? Is this it?"
Yeah, like how many? I would have been sitting every time that she was in some sort of danger, be like, "Is this where they're gonna do it? Is this where they're gonna do it?"
And then in that scene, Hawkeye jumps off the cliff. You see him airborne. She's still laying on the ground. Last you see, and then she goes flying off after him like But it's kind of in slow motion, so you have a full second to digest. Mm-hmm. Hawkeye is clear of the cliff. He's falling.
Yeah.
And then she dives off after him, catches him, ties him to her rope or whatever. So But
therein lies the big question. That was on freaking Vormir. How the heck does Elaine from Seinfeld know what happened there? Which clearly she doesn't actually know what happened there because she's saying Clint's the one responsible for her death. When that's not true. She was responsible for her death, 100%. Clint actively tried to make her not do that.
Right.
So,
God, I hope this ends up actually being Elaine from Seinfeld. And they warp that whole thing in. That was part of the Marvel Universe. And this is where Elaine goes with her career. She gets her shit together and joins the government.
It's just another branch of the multiverse, It can be like, hey, do you know who's responsible for her death?
All right, so how exactly did everyone watch this movie? Because I know this was available in a couple of different formats. So, Paul, how did you watch the movie?
Well, you guys both went to the movies to watch it, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I think I might be the only one that watched it on the Disney Plus, which, I don't know. We had been talking about like, oh, this is one of those things I'd want to see in the movies. Like, this is a big spectacle thing that I would want to see in the movies. I think sometimes me just wanting to go to the movies is because I want to go to the movies. And if I have the option to watch something, like not with a bunch of other people that are going to like be on their phones and throwing popcorn and stuff like that, I'm like happy to do it. Like I don't think I regularly want to pay the price of 2 movie tickets to sit in my house and watch a movie that's new, but I think occasionally it's cool to have the option. And that was also one of the reasons I got HBO for the summer, because I'm like, Suicide Squad's going to come out on HBO. All these, the Mortal Kombat did, and Kong and
Watch
Godzilla.
The Snyder Cut.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, like a subscription to have that option is like I'll do that, and then I'll see
It's kind
other
of a
stuff in the
no-brainer.
movie theater.
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched it on Disney Plus the night that it came out.
Wow, I'm genuinely shocked that you didn't, do something else instead of watching Black Widow.
What?
Your usual joke.
I wasn't prepared for this.
Wait, you guys watched the new Black Widow?
I've already prepped my joke for the next time, so since this was an alternate timeline episode, I did not have a joke prepared.
So you guys watched Black Widow? See, I went in my backyard and watched Black Widow Spider. I'm not as good at this as you are.
Black Widow, the 1979 movie, but no, I got nothing.
Sean, how about you? How did you watch this?
I went to the movies. I went to Picture Show at East Windsor. This is the first time I've gone to the movies since pandemic. I freaking love going to the movies. The Picture Show at East Windsor. That's right. I'll plug them because I had a great time. And I didn't know this. We went on Tuesday. Tuesday. Apparently Tuesday's $5 ticket day, just all day long.
Wow.
So me and Jacqueline went, and it was $5 each to get in at like 6 o'clock at night. I was like, hell yeah, this is great. Concessions were still full concession prices. That ended up costing more than the tickets, but that was fine. And it's not like when we were kids, which I kind of miss, where you get crappy seats and everything's sticky. No, the theaters now all have those fancy chairs. Everything's super clean. Every chair is a good chair. You've got a beautiful view of the screen from wherever you're sitting. They all have the recliny thing going on, not just at this theater, but like I can't remember the last time I went to a theater that wasn't all fancy schmancy at this point. Like, so I love the theater. I love the movies. I like going. So yeah.
All right. Well, I actually watched this twice so far. The first time I went to go see it in the theater was following my annual birthday dinner at Red Lobster. So I was full of seafood. So Karen and I went to the AMC over in the Hamilton Commons, which will always not. It will never not be the Hoyt's Theater, and I will never not hear you, Paul, say "ow" at Hoyt's.
That was my thing.
And yeah, that doesn't have the reclining seats, or at least not in the theater I was in. But it does have the choose your own seats ahead of time thing, which I love. I love being able to just pick out my seats instead of trying to like hunt for seats that are together or whatever. Like when you buy the tickets, you say these are my seats. So I picked the seats like fourth row from the back of the theater, so I'm like nice and comfortable, straight on, and it was delightful. We got an icy. So that was the first icy I've had since the pandemic started. So first icy in over a year, and first time in the theater in over a year. So that was cool. It was me and Karen.
Who even are you anymore?
You're
not the man I knew.
I missed icy so desperately. It was so good. And then since we have access to nefarious means, we watched it again the other night for a second time through our streaming service in our living room. It's totally legal. And there were no snacks that time. We were just comfy, chilling on the couch, watching Black Widow for like the second night in a row. And it was quite an experience. So,
oh, I skipped the snacks. We did classic movie theater snacks. It was the first time back to the theater. I assume you did the same.
We just had the icy because we were full of seafood.
Seafood, right.
We
did
wanted
soda,
more,
popcorn,
but it seemed like dangerous.
I watched it. I did the same thing a little bit where I tried to watch it again before we talked about it tonight. So, I watched it the night it came out, but since I had the premiere access, I was like, this afternoon, I was like, I'm going to try to watch it again. I didn't finish it though, because Nate has this very, very regimented TV schedule that, like he came down and banged the gavel and was like, it's my time now. But I felt like I saw enough to be able to have some more things to talk about for this. But at the same time, I think I liked it more the second time I watched it because I wasn't there was like no expectation anymore. I could I could sort of appreciate it for what it was. So I had a little bit of a different experience when I watched it this afternoon.
I also found that the second time viewing it, I got a lot more out of specific performances. Noticed a lot more things in the opening credits, like, oh, there's the Christmas tree that she mentioned. And just knowing where it all went, seeing the parents' reactions to what was happening, and like their reactions to the kids in the beginning of the movie was don't know, it just connected with me a lot more the second time, being able to see kind of the performances were pretty nuanced. Like, specifically the when David Harbour's saying goodbye to the girls and everything, or when they both come to the conclusion that they have to leave, and he's clearly more excited about it than she is, but he's also still genuinely cares about these kids. And also, later in the movie, when Rachel Weisz, she's still working for the Red Room and whatnot, and then she has that conversation with Natasha about the fact that she actually did something that affected her as a parent. Like, clearly she felt like she had some, serious detachment issues there, and she's also completely screwed in the head, because who that goes through the Red Room wouldn't be completely screwed in the head. But the fact that it was some of her, like, her motherly wisdom or whatever that helped Natasha stay who she was, like, there's a clear, like, change in her face at that point, of, like, her expression on understanding that she actually did some good in the world. And I think that was an interesting turning point to pay attention to the second time around, of like, all right, so how does she eventually get convinced to turn in the first place? Like, it seemed almost like on a dime, but then it really was pretty well acted and explained looking at it the second time. At least I thought so.
One of the things that I think struck me the second time watching it was, the flashback stuff at the beginning. I agree with you 100%. That was all really interesting and really well acted. Part of me was like, why did they set it in 1995? Like I guess that matches Scarlett Johansson's actual age. Although, I think that the character of Black Widow could be in her 30s or in her 40s, and it wouldn't be much different which decade, which of those age groups she was. Like, we would buy it. I was sort of like, would this make more sense to be in the 80s, like during the Cold War, this before the Soviet Union crumbled?
It's not a bad point. You don't even have to go all the way back to 85. You could have just pushed it back like 88, 89. When did the wall come down? 89, right? So you pushed it back like 5 or 6 years. I'd believe Scarlett Johansson was 5 or 6 years older. I wouldn't sit there and do the math. Yeah. I don't know how young that girl was. What was she, 10, 12? I don't know. Maybe she was 9. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting point. Though I did see when I was watching, after we watch every episode of Loki, we go over to just like we did during WandaVision and for Falcon Winter Soldier, we go over to the Nerdist YouTube channel and watch these Easter egg episode breakdowns. And they did one for Black Widow, and they pointed out that like a bunch of MCU stuff happens in that exact same year. Like, now I can't remember what any of it was.
Was that the same year that Captain Marvel comes crashing back into the blockbuster?
Yep, that's the same year that Captain Marvel is back in the blockbuster. It's the same year that it has something to do with Alexander Pierce, like something with his daughter or something.
It's the same year that Hank Pym gets kicked out of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like, a lot of stuff happened in that specific year.
I wonder if that's the year that Disney bought whatever it owned of Marvel initially. Right? Would have been the end of the 90s was the comic bust. That's when Marvel was selling off properties left and right.
That'd be interesting. Yeah, the number of well thought out Easter eggs in these movies is kind of hilarious.
I can't think of any other big comic book thing that happened in 95, like why they would pick that year to, the only thing I can think of is the comic bust, and I think that's around the time that like Sony bought Spider-Man, Fox bought X-Men. I don't know what Disney originally bought, if they bought any. I think they might have bought Iron Man and Captain America.
All right, let's see. 1990s. Let's look for... Oh my goodness. So, the Marvel Cinematic Universe Wiki. Oh my goodness gracious, this is gigantic. So, we're in 1990. Let's go to 1995.
As Kris is looking that up, I just finished watching the entire MCU, every TV show, every movie in order.
Oh, wow.
All right, so
in chronological order?
So I kind of put it in the order that I thought, yeah, more or less chronological. I kind of put it in the order that I thought was going to work, that I would suggest to other people to watch it. And I kind of made a list as I went, because a lot of the TV shows, especially Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's not season by season. It's episode by episode.
Yeah.
Like, you got to watch like the first 3 episodes of season 2, then watch Thor. Then watch 6 episodes, then watch Captain America 2, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, because they specifically reference things back in.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Darkhold bounces around through Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Runaways, I think maybe Cloak and Dagger. Like, it's all over the place. Or Cloak and Dagger end up in The Runaways. So, like, a lot of that stuff's got to be in a real specific order, too. So, yeah, I kind of pieced it together as I went.
Yeah, I was curious which shows you also included, because I'm pretty sure Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is confirmed to be effectively non-canon at this point, or perhaps in an alternate timeline. And I think it just doesn't make any sense anymore after they did the whole Inhumans thing. Because,
So, it is actually, it's infuriating to me that they did that, or at least at the moment, because I didn't watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. all the way through the first time. I just finished it now. Like, I watched like maybe the first 2 or 3 seasons, and now I just finished it. And the end of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. wraps all the crazy ass crap they did in the last 2 or 3 seasons back up in such a nice, neat bow that the MCU could have just left it there, and I don't think it would have affected anything. The only 2 reasons I can think of that Marvel wants to disavow the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is awesome now that I've said it aloud. The only 2 things I can think of is they want to reuse Ghost Rider and don't want to deal with the baggage that Ghost Rider was already used, or they want to reuse the Inhumans. But I don't think it's the Inhumans, because they've got the X-Men to work with now. They'd have to be thinking 50 years that, like, by the time you get through that, they're not going to get to the Inhumans for freaking ever. They've got too many other great things lined up. They're not going to get there. So it's not the Inhumans. Maybe they're thinking Ghost Rider, but they haven't said anything about a Ghost Rider. And the only other thing that sort of crossed over is the Darkhold. They didn't use the same... They used the same prop in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as they did in The Runaways. If the Darkhold was in Cloak and Dagger, they used the same prop again. They used a different prop for the Darkhold in WandaVision.
yeah.
But part of the whole shtick that they set up at Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was that it looks different depending on who's looking at it. Like, it's in English for people who read English. It's in German for people who read German. Like, so if they were that bent out of shape about a prop, that's the...
Yeah, like, I could
nitpicky.
see Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fitting in. I really could, if it wasn't for... And even with Ghost Rider, like, there's different Ghost Riders. They used the car Ghost Rider, for crying out loud. So they could very easily just use Johnny Blaze for an MCU situation.
Johnny Blaze is in it for 2 seconds. They show the origin of him giving it over to the other one.
Well, there's ways to get around it.
There's ways to get around it.
I've got no question they could figure that out, no problem. But the Inhumans thing is what's really... That's the big hinge. Because that was a worldwide event. They altered Earth, and it's never mentioned in the MCU.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
If there were really Inhumans popping up everywhere on the planet, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on the planet suddenly getting superpowers, and they never mention it in any movie ever, like, it's too big of a disconnect. And they even mention Thanos during that one last season where, what's his name? Nathan Petrelli from Heroes got the superpowers, and they're like, oh, Thanos is attacking Earth. I better go help the Avengers out or something. Like, they even mention that whole thing happening by name, but then they don't really deal with the snap on the show either. They don't really deal with the snap or the blip. So,
see, I thought Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. dealt with that great, because the same time the snap and the blip, whichever blip and the snap, whatever are occurring, they're not in time. They're 20,000 years in the future. And then they come back.
Oh, right. I forgot they were in the future.
And when
there,
they come
space.
back, they're isolated in the lighthouse dealing with some lockdown thing. They never get out of the lighthouse. And then by the time they walk out of the lighthouse, they're jumping backwards through time to the 20s. So they're not in our present, because that one guy that they brought back from the future is like, why am I spending all my time locked in the stupid lighthouse? This is where I was in the future. So, like, they really managed to separate them out. The only other big character they used, and I don't know, big character is what's his name? Gravitron or whatever. But I don't think they're going to get to that in the MCU either.
No, they used Absorbing Man and stuff, but
Well, they did use Absorbing Man.
but regardless, it's fine that those characters were mentioned in Agents of Shield. And then in the beginning, they had all these crossovers with the MCU, and they were pretty cool. Like, what's his name? Agent Sitwell was in Agents of Shield early on.
Sif shows up.
Yep, Sif shows up early on, and the Nick Fury was in a couple episodes too.
Yep.
But it was also one of those things that if we're gonna do Endgame, and we're pulling in everyone, you're not gonna pull in Quake at the very least, like the World Wrecker. You're not gonna pull in a character like that. You're not gonna ever mention that Coulson lived to any of the Avengers, even all these years later. That's my big issue.
But who
with
knows?
it. Like,
the only person... Oh, I guess Nick Fury knows. Yeah.
right, Nick Fury knows.
Yeah,
and
knows.
like when it comes to the actual end of the world and everything, he's not going to mention this. Like Nick Fury knows he gave control of Shield over to Coulson. So it works, but it doesn't. And they played too fast and loose with it, and that was kind of a whole thing. Like it was being done by a different division. So like the TV division and the movie division weren't in close communications. So then when they moved on to the Netflix stuff, that's when Feige got more involved of saying, all right, we're going to try and keep this in continuity a little bit better. And they still kind of screwed that up because the Netflix shows, timeline-wise, also don't deal with the snap or the blip. So they don't necessarily line up.
Which is why when I watch them, I finish them out right before the snap. I think that's the way to handle that, because it's not like they're saying that it's not like September 1st, 2020.
Exactly.
Like,
they
don't
have
give
to
you the
happen
date.
after Avengers, but that's pretty much it, right? Because I haven't
Right.
rewatched them in a while. But they have to happen after Avengers. Because they mention the Battle of New York a lot. That's a thing that happened. But as long as you watch those shows before Infinity War happens, then you're pretty much fine. But then again, why are none of these characters helping out?
Well, they might not know about them.
I guess.
Yeah,
all right.
They're a little low key.
Yeah.
I mean, Luke Cage.
Loki.
They are, like homegrown New York superheroes, not, not national known Avengers.
That's
Yes,
a solid point.
As much as I love Daredevil, I don't even know that he'd be on the radar for we're fighting Thanos. We need to get some people together. Let's go find the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. Like, nah, I think we're gonna.
I mean, they got everyone though. I mean,
They did.
No offense to, like, we're talking about Black Widow here. She's a normal human, although she is effectively indestructible, seeing as, I don't know, there was that part where, what's his name? What's her name? Taskmaster hit the car with a rocket launcher and it flipped like 1 billion times. Pretty much would have liquefied anybody. And she just gets out like, well, shit, that sucked. So, I don't know, but still, like, Luke Cage is effectively indestructible. He would have been good in that fight. I would have loved to see I would love to see more of them, but...
And you know what? They could have walked that off by just saying, how do you know they weren't there? Some of those wide-angle shots, there's 10,000 people there, right?
It's a good point. They definitely could do that. The Netflix shows in particular I find super interesting because they have more or less said that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was no longer canon. That's been discussed in, like, interviews and whatnot. And... to a degree, Agent Carter, though I don't think that's ever been officially confirmed this isn't part of the MCU. And Agent Carter totally fits still.
How the hell would that screw anything up? Unless you're going back and doing like a 1949 Captain America movie now, like, oh, he went back in the past, but I don't think they're doing that.
Yeah, no, Agent Carter still totally fits. And that show was great, and I'm super sad it got canceled.
I watched Agent Carter. I didn't watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't know if you've noticed by my quietness, but I have no idea what the hell you guys are talking about with Agents
I was just going to say, okay, you could probably pick up from our conversation that show got weird.
It got real weird.
But in a really good way.
Yeah,
like
every year it was like, every season it was like, you know what, man? You don't know. We'll do it.
You want to see what happens when we go in space? We're putting them in space. Why not? We're going to fight the Kree. It's going to be great. There's blue people everywhere.
We're going to do black and white 1920s episode. You don't know what's happening. Bring it.
And that Ghost Rider was great, by the way.
I thought they did a real great job with it. I enjoyed Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. start to finish. I mean, you can nitpick it, and it was short, but I enjoyed it. Runaways was the only one that was really kind of tough.
I didn't watch Runaways because I loved the comic, and I didn't want to spoil that because I heard it wasn't all that good. But
I watched Runaways. That was weird. But I don't know the source material, so I don't have a lot to compare it to. It was very... it felt like it was just as much like CW teen dramedy as it was comic book show.
Yeah, that and Cloak and Dagger had, and
Oof, yeah, I watched an episode of Cloak and Dagger.
I don't want
I
to
wasn't
say
crazy about that.
I don't even mean it as an insult. I think they were aimed at a younger. It was aimed at a younger audience. They were trying to make some TV shows for, I don't know, let's say 12 to 14-year-olds, right? The Netflix
Right, because they
ones-
went on Freeform, right? That's where they aired,
something like
like
that.
with the modernization of the ABC Family. Also, real quick, Paul, the original Runaways comic was by Brian K. Vaughan.
Okay.
You know
So
who that is?
that's the Paul. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, you liked Why the Last Man, right?
Oh yeah, I think I've read almost all of Brian K. Vaughan stuff.
Yeah.
Except for that, I've read Why the Last Man and what do you call it, Ex Machina, and Saga is amazing.
I haven't started Saga yet, but I knew that you were a fan of Why the Last Man, and so I just wanted to let you know that the original Runaways comic, that's the freaking pedigree right there. So when they were adapting a TV show, I thought this could be really good, but then I heard it wasn't, and I was just too scared to watch it, so I didn't.
I never read the source material for Runaways. Maybe it was great. There's just too many comics. I mean, I love comic books. I can't read them all. But no, that one, Runaways was the toughest to get through. But that and Cloak and Dagger were clearly aimed at 12 to 14-year-olds.
Mhm.
The Netflix ones were clearly aimed at adults. And then Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agents of Carter, that was kind of like your happy medium, for everybody.
Man, do I miss the Netflix ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. All those rumors floating around, they're going to be using those cast members again. It's making me pretty excited.
I heard they're putting Punisher in a Moon Knight TV series.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
But I heard the Moon Knight TV series won't be on Disney.
Really
I heard it's going to be on something else. They want to distance themselves from it a little because it's not.
interesting.
It's not. Moon Knight's more of a Punisher level character as far as appropriateness for children. So I think they don't want. I think Disney doesn't want that on. Your kids flipping through my favorite Marvel movies, and he clicks on Moon Knight, and all of a sudden there's somebody with like schizophrenia having sex with people, and Punisher comes in and shoots. Like it's a whole. I think they're trying to distance it. And I say I heard this.
Yeah, it does still appear to be slated for Disney Plus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I say I heard it. I don't hear anything. Jacqueline tells me stuff because she reads everything. She just is constantly reading, and then she says blah 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 blah. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh.
all the official stuff seems to have it listed as a Disney Plus show.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. And it's my friend Evan's favorite character, so he's like, really, really
The
excited.
Disney Plus stuff's been great.
It has,
I don't
yeah.
know what's better, the Disney stuff or the Netflix stuff. I think I like the Netflix more, but they were using more characters that I like. Avengers are secondary characters for me. Like when I was growing up reading comic books, I liked them. But Daredevil and Punisher, those are that's two of my top guys right there. So
And they did those characters pretty well.
they did them great.
I think it's hard to compare the Disney stuff and the Marvel stuff because I think that the Disney stuff and the Netflix stuff because I think the Disney stuff is specifically latching on to this already established interconnected universe and expanding things and exploring different characters and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's very
Whereas I felt like
flavored.
Yeah, the Netflix stuff was trying to sort of make its own self-contained group of shows, like purposely not connected to the bigger stuff.
Yeah, like it fits in as in it's the same universe, but it had a very different feel to it. And it was all really interesting. I mean, I loved almost all of the Netflix stuff. Season 1 of Iron Fist is genuinely not good.
Rewatching it, I enjoyed it more this time than I did the first time through, but it's still not great. But season 2 does so much to redeem it
Season 2 is amazing
that it makes season 1 more enjoyable.
I have never seen in my entire life. I've never seen a TV show improve in quality so much from season 1 to season 2. I've never seen anything like that.
I might have to rewatch all these because I remember it very differently. I think that season 1. I think I recognized that it was nowhere near as good as Luke Cage and Daredevil and Jessica Jones, which sadly it had the distinction of being like the last one of the four, so you had all the other stuff to compare it to.
Mm-hmm.
And like, like Jessica Jones and Luke Cage were like groundbreaking for a lot of reasons as far as like the social issues type stuff that they dealt with. And then you get to Iron Fist and it's kind of about like white collar crime and a dude from a mythical, kung fu world. So
who will not stop telling you that he's the immortal Iron Fist.
Yeah. So it's certainly, I certainly recognize that it was not as strong as the other entries, but I think I liked the first season just because I didn't really know anything about Iron Fist, so I was like invested in what the story was. The second season, I didn't like it. I don't know. I might have to watch it again to compare them, but the second season, God, I felt like the acting and the way that they, connected a lot of the people was just like really forced.
By the end of the second season, when you get to that last scene, and this time watching it, I know there's no third season a coming. It's heartbreaking. It's like, right? This is you have just gone uphill on a steady uphill. This is the way I felt about it. I know Paul had a different experience, but I got there finally. I was like, this is, I agree with the first part of what Paul said. The other three were just so much. It felt like they were so much better, which is a little unfair because you hit 3 home runs in a row and somebody comes up and hits a single. That's good, man. You got on base.
That's still
you
good.
did a good job.
Yeah, I don't want to say that I say it's not good. I didn't say I didn't like it. I still enjoyed it. But yeah, especially by comparison. But there was just a lot about season 1 of Iron Fist that wasn't good. But
by the end of season 2, I was like, I'm enjoying this as much as I was enjoying Luke Cage or Jessica Jones. Not as much as Daredevil, but I'm super biased there, so that's all right. But I was like, I want the next episode, and it's not coming.
Yeah, Karen and I were actively angry at the show because we kind of reluctantly went into season 2. Like, all right, I was all for it, and she was like, all right, I'll watch it because she really didn't like season 1. And I was like, I mean, no, it wasn't good, but it was still cool, so I'm into this. But then by the end, she was like, you made me like this show. How dare you make me like this show? Because, you had, Danny and his brother, like, kind of working together, and somehow he got the fist back, and the fist went to the super cool girl, the white tiger girl with the sword, and that was so cool. I was so exciting. And I liked that villain dude, too. He was
Davos.
Yeah, Davos. He was pretty snazzy. I was into that. I was really into those Netflix shows, and, I mean, Daredevil at least got a kind of sort of a conclusion. But I felt like Luke Cage and Iron Fist in particular, like they really left on notes that I really wanted to know what happened next. Like Luke Cage took over the freaking crime syndicate.
I know.
I want to know where that goes.
It's so good.
I'm so sad I don't get to know where that goes. And it's those 2 shows and Agent Carter were the ones that just give me one more season to wrap it up. That's all I'm asking. Just give me one more, close those out, because I felt like Jessica Jones, Daredevil in particular, but Jessica Jones to a degree, they ended enough. I was okay with where they stopped. But then again, if we're going to start seeing these characters again in the actual MCU, maybe we will see more of it. Because I mean, She-Hulk's coming. Abomination is going to be in Shang-Chi, for crying out loud. Like, they're pulling all sorts of weird stuff. What's her name?
Abomination. Like, are they bringing back Tim Roth?
Yeah,
are they?
Tim Roth's going to be on She-Hulk. They announced that. He's going to show up in She-Hulk, but then in the last Shang-Chi trailer, they showed Abomination fighting someone. I'm like, I'm sorry, excuse me?
Oh, I didn't see the new Shang-Chi trailer. But
he's in a cage. He's fighting what it looks like Wong from Doctor Strange. What's going on?
Love it. Love it.
Love it. And what's it? They just brought back Sif in Loki, and they interviewed Jamie Alexander and said, you haven't seen the last of her in the MCU. Thank freaking goodness, because they killed the Warriors 3 completely unceremoniously.
Yeah, that hurt a little bit.
That
hurt a little bit.
And didn't even mention Sif, and I'm so glad they're bringing that in. So I appreciate so much how much they pull all these different little tiny pieces back in. Like, anytime you think they've forgotten about something, they pull something else back in. And which, to tie it back into Black Widow, because this has kind of become MCU cast.
we're gonna tie it back into Black Widow now. Is that what this episode's about?
One of the things.
This is exactly why I didn't want to do Marvel movies, because I knew we would talk about everything except the movie.
Imagine if we had not done this in between episode and tried to talk about Crank next time when we had all this to talk about.
Yeah, it's true.
So, but to tie it into Black Widow, one of the things I really, really appreciated about this movie is that they didn't kill anyone of value. Like, we could very easily see David Harbour and Rachel Weisz again. We're definitely going to see Yelena again. And I'm very curious what they're going to do with Taskmaster, because I have a lot of friends who are big Taskmaster fans, and they felt that Taskmaster was done pretty dirty. They effectively gave Taskmaster the Deadpool and X-Men Origins treatment, where they turned this wisecracking mercenary character into a effectively mind-controlled silent character, which is I don't have much relationship with Taskmaster, so that didn't bother me at all. But also, they didn't kill Taskmaster. Who's to say that Taskmaster isn't just going to be a prick now? Because she was effectively raised in a pretty nasty situation, so...
Right. They mind-controlled a bunch of girls. It's not to say that all those girls would have been sweethearts. Some of them were probably dicks.
They're all being pretty nice to, the people who literally just freed them from their mind control. But at the same time, I mean, Taskmaster in particular, like, she's not a very mentally stable human at this point. So even more so than the rest of the widows. So I think it's very plausible to think that Taskmaster is going to show up later in some other capacity, and maybe not necessarily in a good guy capacity.
So there was a thing that you said about Yelena that I wanted to just make sure we touched on before I launched into Taskmaster. But, I mean, to me, it seemed like part of what this movie was doing was introducing Yelena as sort of a replacement for Black Widow, or a possible Black Widow type for a future Avengers movie, which was fine, Scarlett Johansson wasn't going to want to do this forever, this seemed like a good way to do it, and I thought it was, I thought she was great, the actress that played Yelena, and that the two of them had great chemistry together. So
she was my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, that was really nice to see. But, Taskmaster, I don't know. I don't know if I don't think I disliked Taskmaster. Like, I guess that when I saw it, I thought that Taskmaster was a smart choice of a villain to use for the Black Widow movie, because I'm sure Sean will correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that there's a villain that you specifically associate with Black Widow, and Taskmaster has sort of fought everybody. Mm-hmm. He's been in Spider-Man comics and Captain America and Iron Man, and then also, because he's sort of like a mercenary that only has allegiance to the highest bidder, that is only only allegiances to money and not to a country or anything like that, that he sort of plays into this world of spies and espionage and stuff like that a Black Widow story would be about. So I thought Taskmaster was a right choice for the villain. I think if I was more of a Taskmaster fan, I probably would be bummed, because I know that I know that part of what people like about Taskmaster is that he's loud and gruff and a smart mouth, that part of his attitude is part of the character, and they took all that away.
Yeah, it's almost like the Trevor Slattery thing again, except not funny. Because the whole Mandarin thing in Iron Man 3 I thought was hilarious. But no, you're right. I don't think there is a specific villain associated with Black Widow, and it was a great choice of a villain to put in there. I also really, really loved the way they portrayed like I didn't mind the lack of the smart mouth thing, especially story wise, especially considering that we can, since they never didn't kill the character, we can definitely get that now in future installments with Taskmaster. But the specific shots of the fighting with Taskmaster doing moves that we saw, like there was a specific shot where she was fighting exactly the same way that Winter Soldier fought with the knife. Specific shots of fighting just like Cap and Winter Soldier, doing like there was a shot that was exactly like the shot where he was fighting Batroc in the beginning. The way that she immediately turned around and did that, the traditional Black Widow spinning around with her legs move, like did it right back to her, I thought was really cool. Like, I love all those shots, and I really want somebody to put up on YouTube somewhere that's way more into this than I am, just doing the side-by-side comparisons of, all right, this is the time that he fought like Black Panther where he did the claws thing. Sorry, when she did the claws thing. Taskmaster has just been a guy in my head for so many years. It's hard to flip that script in my brain, but I thought that was a really cool touch, making Taskmaster quite literally fight shot for shot the way that other Marvel heroes had in the past.
He did the bouncing arrow shot.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So yeah, They did a lot of things with Taskmaster right, and they did a lot of things wrong. Switching so much about the character, from switching the gender, obviously, from the turning it into a mindless automaton. The gender thing didn't bother me, but if I was a huge Taskmaster fan and you just changed part of my character, I guess I could be bothered by that. I would get it, I guess. But if they bring Taskmaster back, like you said, and they give her that personality, maybe they can make it up to the fans. Mm-hmm. The other thing that jumped out at me, and it's very nitpicky. I can't say this enough. I love this movie. This movie is great. All the Marvel movies are great. And anytime I have any complaint about them, in the back of my mind, I'm like, do you remember what you grew up with? Do you remember Daredevil and the Hulk on TV, and Daredevil wasn't allowed to look like a devil, so he was just wearing black? Do you remember this? Lou Ferrigno? No. These movies are all great. They're all perfection in comparison. But Taskmaster's costume was so much cooler in the comic book, and if you were going to bring it to the screen, you were like, it's just too comic booky. The thing that jumps out that you could change is the fact that it's blue and orange, but they left it blue and orange and gave her ski goggles. Like, he had this awesome skull-looking mask with this hood that made him look ominous, and you gave her like a ski helmet and goggles. That was way less intimidating than what they could have done with that. The head. The rest of the suit was fine. They didn't change a whole lot from the comic book to the screen with the rest of it. But I don't know.
Yeah, the mask was slightly problematic for me, and I get why they went the direction they went. I just don't think they nailed it. But like I said, there is always room for improvement in the future, and that is what Val is doing, right? That's what Elaine from Seinfeld is doing. She's clearly assembling a Dark Avengers team. So
is it the Dark Avengers? I thought maybe it was West Coast Avengers. When I'm looking at the pieces, because you've got U.S. Agent, I assume she's going to go scoop up White Vision.
Mm-hmm. Probably.
And now a Black Widow. It's not the Black Widow that I associate. Like, when I think, and I haven't read these books since I was a kid, but when I think of West Coast Avengers, if I'm not mistaken, your lineup was like U.S. Agent, White Vision, War Machine, and I think Black Widow. But then I also associate Black Widow. She was Daredevil's partner for a while, and then there's this thing in San Francisco, and there's a whole. I know Black Widow mostly from Daredevil comics. But when I think of the West Coast Avengers, I think you've got, like, again, if I don't know how you pull in War Machine, and I don't see how they could get to any of this. We know what their movies are for the next 10 years because they put them up, like, they tell you, like, you can see all the way out to Fantastic Four, which is years out.
Yeah, well, we know what they've told us so far. We don't know what they haven't. Right. And we don't know what's going to change. Like, I mean, Inhumans was announced as a movie. And then it got turned into a really bad TV series. So I
watched it. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was probably one of the tougher ones, but I don't know.
I haven't made it through it.
You didn't make it through it?
No. I just don't have any interest.
It seems like they could turn any one of these things into a Disney Plus TV show. And then you spend 6 episodes exploring a thing instead of, then you've got 4.5 hours of screen time instead of 2.5 for a movie.
Yeah.
Part of me wondered what I would have thought of this Black Widow movie if it had been a Disney Plus TV show, since that's what we've been watching recently. And I guess it wouldn't have the like flourish of a movie, and I think that she was sort of owed a movie, but like, I don't know, I think that's my big beef with this thing, is that you're talking about a character that's been involved with the MCU for over 10 years,
almost
that
since the
has
beginning.
Yeah, that's that's been in like all these different movies, but hasn't had one to herself, and who was, I'm not going to say was killed unceremoniously in Endgame, but who didn't really have the send off that the other characters that were leaving the franchise got. Like Iron Man got a big send off, Captain America got a send off. And I think that her scene in Endgame was, I know she had many scenes in Endgame, and she was sort of like running the team at one point, which was cool. But like, I think that her death scene in Endgame was cool. I think a lot of people have a problem with it. Like, I think some people were like, "Oh, why not kill Hawkeye? Like, he's, she's so much cooler than Hawkeye." But like, I think that part of the way that scene worked was you didn't know which one it was going to be. And if it's one that you're more invested in, it's a bigger deal. But this movie should have been like her send off, and I don't think it really felt like that. Like, I think it felt like a way to introduce a new character, which I didn't mind, the Yelena character, but I don't really feel like it said goodbye to Scarlett Johansson, to the Scarlett Johansson Black Widow in a meaningful way. And I don't know, I hate to say this, because it's like, I think the perception is going to be that, like, oh, you didn't think that she could carry the movie, or that she needed, other big stars to carry the movie. But like, I don't think that's what it was. I think that you could have better told her story if you had been able to use Hawkeye and Nick Fury. Like, if we had actually seen, like, if Budapest hadn't been sort of like a rushed flashback and had been part of the story, and could have even tied in Taskmaster or Red Guardian, you know what I mean? Like, if we had more than one time period to move through to tell this story, and had some of the other characters, I think you could have served her better and had a better send off for her that felt like a more complete movie.
You know what? I think the problem is that what you're saying was not this movie's purpose, and it should have been. Like, this movie, like we were saying right in the beginning, it feels like it belongs right after Civil War. It doesn't feel like it belongs after Endgame. It just doesn't, because it doesn't really address that. And when I look at that one single scene that makes sense, after that happens after the whole thing where you see her grave, it's not the only thing that makes sense to me, that makes it seem like more exciting, is to think of seeing it before all this stuff happens, and then making what you're seeing into some sort of mystery, which is kind of what most of the post-credit scenes are, right? They're usually like these things that make you wonder, like, okay, well, what does that mean? Where's that going next? And that's the only part that makes sense to me. It almost feels like there should be another one that actually does serve as a proper send-off for the character. Like, how did that grave get made? Who put it there? Was there a funeral for her? And when did everybody else in the Avengers team find out that she had a family? Because they never mention anything like that. Anytime they talk about her past, it's always like she's pretty secretive about it, or whatever.
And actually, like, Tony asks if she has, do we know if she had any family? And Captain America says, yeah, us. Which is basically like saying no.
Exactly.
Right.
Like, how did they find out about this stuff? There is definitely more interesting stuff to tell, and I agree with you. The whole Budapest thing was really glossed over. They're showing the arrow holes in the wall. Like, well, I want to see that. like I understand the whole Dracov's daughter thing. That's a neat callback to a throwaway line in Avengers, but Budapest has come up a handful of times, and that's what I want to see. I want to see her and young Jeremy Renner like having it out where he was hired to kill her, and then how did that conversation go where he decided not to kill her and bring her in as part of the team, and then what happened after that? Like, and then how exactly did her funeral go? Where was she buried? Why was she buried there? You know, have any of the other Avengers team met up with her family? Did Clint know about her family? Like, freaking Red Guardian was her dad. There's no way, or her father figure. There's no way that did nobody on the Avengers team even know that she had some sort of relation to another super soldier, like a public super soldier that has action figures. Like, it leaves a lot of questions if you look at it as a send off, which is effectively what, looking at it from our real world perspective, that's what this movie seems like it's supposed to be. But the movie itself clearly isn't. I think Sean's more on the money, where this was probably something they had floating around. And what is it? There was apparently some document leaked at some point that said that the head of the studio was like, you know, female-led superhero movies don't make money, so that's why the movie never happened in the first place. And then Wonder Woman happened, and it made a bunch of money, and they were like, maybe we should start making female-led superhero movies. I don't know. I don't know all the details of that story, but that's what it smells like to me. This movie should have happened a long time ago, and it feels weird watching it now. It just feels out of place. But I think it fits in great right after Civil War. So I don't know. Next time I do a giant MCU rewatch, I'll be watching it there instead of, you know, where it came out, because it just doesn't make sense as a Phase 4 thing. And I think that if this kicked off Phase 4 like it originally planned to, I think it would have been a worse way to start things. Because
wait, isn't this the beginning of Phase 4?
This was supposed to be the beginning of Phase 4, but then it got delayed, so WandaVision was the official kickoff of Phase 4. And that's way more interesting than this movie.
Especially since, and I still don't understand the concept of why the last Spider-Man movie was the end of Phase 3 and not part of Phase 4. I just don't get it.
Same reason Ant-Man wasn't a part of it, was the close of Phase 2, I think.
Why is that?
I don't know.
All right.
This is when it came out.
Because
like,
it seems
weird
like
little
WandaVision, that Spider-Man movie, they keep putting home in all the titles, and then I can't remember which is which.
Far From Home.
If you say so.
Homecoming's the first one because there was a homecoming dance. Far From Home because he was far away from his home.
And now
No Way Home.
Because of a reason.
Because we don't know yet.
Okay. So the Spider-Man movie, the WandaVision, the Falcon Winter Soldier, the Loki, and not this Black Widow movie all seem like they're telling us exactly what happened to all these characters directly after, what happened with Wanda right after Thanos is killed.
Yeah.
She goes crazy. What happens with Falcon and Winter Soldier? They go to therapy. What happens with Loki? He's jumping through time. What happens with Spider-Man? He's in Paris crying about Tony. Right. So it just feels like you're resetting the stage pretty effectively. I know I'm being glib, but I enjoyed all these things. You're being very effectively resetting the stage. And here's this Black Widow movie. That's a flashback to right before you started resetting the table. Why?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Why?
It's the only connective tissue I can see is what I think Paul mentioned, where they're kind of setting up replacements. Like, that seems to be because at the end of Endgame, we lost Iron Man, we lost Cap, and so now we've got what are the Avengers going to look like now? So we've got Spider-Man kind of sort of filling the Tony Stark shoes, maybe a little bit, but still pretty different.
In tech, but not in leadership.
Exactly. We are going to get Ironheart eventually, but that's not for a little while. So,
and again, that's not a leadership.
Exactly. That's kind of like a new.
I know Cap was the more of the leader, but Tony was a leadership figure.
Yeah. So we don't really have a replacement that yet. We have our replacement Cap. We have two replacement Caps, actually, since we have the U.S. agent, and that's with Elaine from Seinfeld's Avengers team is getting the not so the not so great Captain America, and then she's got what's her face, not Black Widow, and probably you're right, she's going to wind up with White Vision somehow. So who else is going to fill her team, and then who else is going to fill the Avengers team, right? Because the next Doctor Strange movie is going to involve Wanda. We're getting Shang-Chi introduced, which is going to tie back to Iron Man. I don't know how that's going to play in with the whole thing. Like, I have so many questions.
I don't think they have to tie it
back
to Iron Man. I'm assuming they're going to do a little bit of a rewrite with Shang-Chi's origin and make his dad the Mandarin.
Yeah, that's what's happening.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure that's actually been stated, that his dad with the 10 rings is the actual Mandarin that they mentioned in that. They got to re-release that that short that they made.
Oh, that's what I was going to
say.
All
Hail the King.
All Hail the King.
That was so good.
I think what they did with Mandarin in Iron Man 3 was brilliant. Once you tack that on, because now you haven't wasted the character. You gave us this great performance that's super enjoyable from Ben Kingsley, and you didn't expend the character at all.
Yeah.
And in fact, all you did was set him up a little bit, because you're like, no, he's real and he's secretive and he's scary. And that's great.
And he's pretty pissed off that you used his name.
Right, yeah, no, it's so freaking good.
Have you seen that, Paul? The short All Hail the King?
No.
Marvel came out with 4 shorts. I don't know where they were released. I think some of them were available on DVDs.
Yeah, they were like extras on a couple of DVDs. Yeah.
So one of them is Ben Kingsley like getting interviewed by some guy who turns out not to be an interviewer but to work for the real Mandarin, and he kills everybody in the prison, and he takes Ben Kingsley hostage. I'm just blowing through it for you so you know what we're talking about. And basically says the real Mandarin is pissed that you took his name, right? So and that was it. It was like 5 minutes. It was funny.
It even had what's his name from Iron Man 2 also in jail. Sam Rockwell did a whole bit in there too.
Yeah, it's Justin Hammer. It's mostly humor, and it's worth the watch.
It's so good.
There was 3 other ones. There was like a funny thing happened on the way to Thor's hammer. I just rewatched them.
That was good too.
That was only like 2 minutes. Then you had there was one about these 2 kids not kids, but like 20-year-olds finding one of the guns after the thing.
I remember that.
It was like Cold Item 43.
God, I forgot.
It developed
about that
Agent
one.
Sitwell a little bit.
Yeah.
Who you know goes on to be a bad guy. And then the other one was an Agent Carter short, which didn't work perfectly because it basically was the TV show. I think they probably did the short and then they were like, we could do a whole series on this, but then it doesn't really fit in.
Right, because their boss is a different guy, right? Yeah,
right,
I forgot I did see that one. We watched that one after.
It kind of fudges it a little bit. They blew their load too early on that one. They were like, oh shit, this is better than a 15-minute short. We got to do a whole series on this.
There was The Consultant, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Thor's Hammer, Item 47, Agent Carter, and All Hail the King.
Oh, The Consultant, right. The Consultant's real short. It's just Agent Coulson and Sitwell talking about the scene at the end of Hulk. It's only like 2 minutes. That's funny. It's they're all worth a watch. I mean, they're short. They don't take up much time.
Yeah, you got to track down All Hail the King. I'm trying to find.
You can watch them all on. I watched them all on YouTube when I was doing my rewatch. They're all.
I'm sure I can
Facebook
find them on the
video
interwebs
or something. Yeah, around.
But All Hail the King in particular was so good because Sean's 100% right. Like, that just should have been part of the movie or somehow.
That should have been the after credit scene. I know it was long.
Yeah, but
it's not like people are going to complain. You had a 5-minute after credit scene. And people are riding in the streets.
It was so totally worth it because, like you said, it just completely negated what they did. Not even negated. It just made what they did with Trevor Slattery not a problem and showing that they're going to eventually introduce the Mandarin, which they now are doing. I'm just curious how deep they're going to dive with it on, calling back to, because we haven't seen the Mandarin, but we have seen the 10 Rings. They were in Iron Man. They're the ones who kidnapped Tony Stark in the first place. So there's no question in my mind they're going to, call back to that in this movie. But how is how is Shang-Chi going to fit in with the rest of the MCU going forward? It's kind of a fun position to be in. But to Black Widow's point, it doesn't feel like it really fits there other than introducing Yelena.
Which they could have done ahead of time, because that's one of the things they've done so well so far, and they're doing it right now as well, is that you can't give us. It's hard to. If they had come out with Avengers first, it wouldn't have been as good. They built those characters up a little bit first with a bunch of solo movies. Then they gave us Avengers, and then they slowly introduced characters to refill in the ranks as we go.
Mm-hmm.
And that if we got 10 game and you killed off everybody and you were like, all right, next movie, here's the Fantastic Four, and they're going to lead the show and everyone's going to listen to them. That would be a little jarring and probably wouldn't pan out so well. So they've done a good job. Yeah, you've set up Hank Pym, maybe, but he's old. I don't know what they're going to do. But you've set up some other characters.
Cassie
Wasp.
Lang. Cassie Lang's going to be...
Cassie Lang's in it, but Wasp she was the leader of the Avengers for a long time, so I'm assuming
mhm.
she's going to step into a leadership role.
Probably.
It makes some sense. She's smart. She seems more tactical than Lang. Obviously, he's not a leader. But anyway, they've done a good job up till now of giving you the replacement before it's needed.
Yeah.
So like you could have set up this new Black Widow for us before it was time that we needed her.
So if this movie actually came out after Civil War, and then they made a Black Widow movie now that wrapped up the Black Widow story in ways that was a proper send-off for Scarlett Johansson, then we'd all be good. Because I do feel like there's definitely another story to tell there. If they could get her to come back and do a sequel to the Black Widow movie that actually tells that story, that would be super cool. But
yeah, I thought it was a lot of potential info for one movie, and I think everything that you guys are saying is right on. Like that maybe they had this thing written earlier and that some executive squashed it, and now it felt a little bit like an afterthought because it was like, oh, we can do this now, and I'm sure they had to retool some things that they had written. I think those end credit scenes are usually either like funny, like they're usually either a joke or they're a thing to set up the next movie, and this, I guess it's probably setting up something for the Hawkeye TV show, right? Like I'm sure
Maybe
Yelena is going to be back in that Hawkeye TV show.
I believe that's been officially announced, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think the big bummer of this movie was that that they had to, I don't know, I think they had to like fudge things with the storyline to be able to just use the characters and the and the information that they had at their disposal now that she is dead. You know what I mean? Like if they had made this, if they had made this during the time that it takes place, or if they had been making Black Widow movies all along, like they had been making Thor movies and Captain America movies and stuff like that, I think the palette of what they would have had to work with would have been very different. And I think now you were sort of stuck in one place where they only had certain tools in their toolbox.
I think it's somewhat safe to say that this movie, while I did really like it, I think it's great and I'm glad it exists. I think this movie existing in the way that it does is kind of the first, I would say, major misstep or major disservice that I think that they've had in as far as the MCU goes.
So I feel like I keep coming back to this Budapest thing, but I think that was the thing that bothered me the most about I think there was a couple things that bothered me most about the movie. So in all the other movies that Black Widow has been pivotal in, the thing that the thing that's cool about Black Widow and the thing that you sort of like keep going back to about her and that's like engaging about the character is that she's this sort of like international spy that plays both sides of things, that she can be a double agent, You know, like in Iron Man 2, she gets installed in Tony's organization by Shield, right, to keep tabs on him. You know, I think in most of the Avengers movies, she's just there to be part of the team, you know, to fight the bad guy like everybody else does. But you know, like she has a cool scene in Avengers where she's the one that gets Loki to give up his plan, you know, that like
That's a great scene. Yeah.
Which was called back
you know,
in this movie.
And Winter Soldier, like, you know, she's amazing in that. Like Winter Soldier is almost a better Black Widow movie than the Black Widow movie, you know, because like she's you know, she's working for Nick Fury, but like there's a question about whether Nick Fury's compromised, you know, like there's all this stuff in that movie about who do you trust, and she like fits so beautifully into that. Like she like I actually went back and watched Winter Soldier the day after I watched Black Widow because I was like, you know, I wanted to see her do that stuff. And you know, like this movie had less of that kind of stuff, you know, like it fit into this spy world, but like, you know, the biggest, I don't know, I think the biggest misdirection type thing was when, you know, their little family unit breaks into the Red Room. That like, you know, who do you trust? Is the mom, does she have allegiance to the Red Room or to the family, you know, to their little family unit? Mm-hmm. You know, the fact that Natasha put on that like weird like cloaking disguise thing, you know, that also was in Winter Soldier. Like that, you know, that was the biggest sort of like big crazy spy thing. And I really feel like if they had been able to have the Budapest thing, you know, that we could have seen more of what makes Black Widow. And I think the I don't know, like, so you said that Budapest was when Clint, like when she and Clint stop being adversaries and that he decides to bring her in. It looked to me like they were already working together, and that's when she officially decided she was going to defect to Shield, and that she had to take out the Red Room as part of that defection.
I think you're. I don't think that was what I meant to say. It's like I meant to say that I want to see that story in Budapest, and then what happened before it. Right? Where was that apartment where they went to?
That was in Budapest.
That was in Budapest. All right, because that was those arrow shots were supposed to be that hotel room was where Clint went to get her, where he was supposed to kill her, and that's where he decided not to. But then I guess the rest of it did also happen in Budapest. For some reason, I thought that was somewhere else.
We're totally making this up because we didn't see Budapest.
You're right,
and that's what's the bummer to me. Is it should have taken place in two different time periods. They should have told the story that was happening, you know, after Civil War, but then, you know, had flashbacks to Budapest. Because the thing that sucks about all of it, right, is the thing where she defects from, you know, the Red Room to Shield to the good guys is a moment when she has to make a decision and kills a kid, right? Like that wasn't a thing that happened in her life as a, you know, Soviet agent. That was a thing that happened so that she could defect, you know, like that wasn't one of the things from her past that she talks about that she's not proud about. That was her joining the good guys team. And it's Budapest, which is this thing that's like a running gag between her and Hawkeye. Like if they're, you know, the thing that they keep referencing is a time when she killed a kid. Like I think they boned that whole thing. And I think it was because they didn't have, you know, I think if they had been able to have Jeremy Renner and Samuel L. Jackson in that flashback stuff, it would have been it would have been able to tell the story better, and if they had told the story better, it would have served her better.
And so I agree with what you just said. But you just mentioned Jeremy Renner and Samuel Jackson not being in the flashback, and that makes me think, whose voice was it telling her, "Are we clear to blow up the building"?
It was Jeremy Renner.
Was it Jeremy Renner?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, so they paid him a couple $1,000 to get him on the phone.
And he's already doing the Hawkeye TV series. It's not like he's not still under contract. I just don't think, and inexplicably, I just don't think that's the story they were trying to tell, because clearly they weren't. All the Budapest stuff that we think would be super interesting to see was not the story they were trying to tell. That was all like this weird little background material to Natasha taking on the Red Room currently, which was one of my kind of problems with this movie, was that it was all going pretty well, and then all of a sudden the Red Room is a floating sky fortress, which was just a little bit silly.
Well, I know it wasn't part of the story they were trying to tell, but I think it could have served the story that they were trying to tell. And I think you could have brought in elements from that story into the flashback so that they held a little more weight in that story. And I think that those two things specifically would be Taskmaster and Red Guardian. Right? Like Red Guardian, which David Harbour was amazing, by the way.
Yeah, he was great.
He was great. Everything they did with that character was great. I love that they kind of made him funny, like that he was, that he kept referencing Captain America, that like it's his big adversary on the geopolitical stage, but that he's never fought Captain America because Captain America was frozen at the time that he was active.
But
like,
it's also funny. It's also funny because he was saying, like, he was describing, like, comic books that happened. And then they were like, when did that happen? He's like, 1984, 1985. That's when those comic books came out with Red Guardian fighting Captain America. But then the other criminals like, that doesn't make any sense.
Oh, man, that was a funny little Easter egg that, Red Guardian was on a team with like other characters that were referenced around him. Like one of them was a guy who could turn into a bear, and that guy who he was arm wrestling, he called him a big bear.
Yeah.
Cute little.
I didn't catch that, but now that you're saying it, yeah.
But I completely agree with you, Paul. Like I think you're 100% right that this adding those extra bits, like there was room in this movie to add that kind of stuff. Like,
well, so let me say this, right? Like David Harbour was brilliant. Like the way that he played him when he was undercover, is very different than this sort of, pot-bellied, washed up has-been in the prison, and then like what that looked like when he got out, and that there was sort of all those like jokes that he had with the kids was really well done, right? But the actual timeline of his story is weird, because that means that he was Red Guardian probably sometime in the
80s.
Late 80s, early 90s, whatever, that he was like Russia's Avenger, right? And then he goes 3 years undercover with this mission in the US, and then he comes back and the guy puts him in jail, right? If that wasn't his story, if he came back and continued to do Red Guardian stuff, and if they had him involved in a Budapest flashback where he was protecting what's the guy's name? Dreykov.
Dreykov's daughter, or Dreykov, right?
If they had him involved in that story, right? Then like he could have fought other like Avenger types. It could have been like, this is me. I am Red Guardian. I am, Russia's this, whatever. And then if whatever it was failed and that guy puts him in the prison because of that, then like that could have been why he's angry about that guy is that he never got to fight Captain America. You know, like that, like the Captain America thing was such a weird joke, and I think it almost would have been funnier if like that was why he was so angry and wanted his revenge on them, is that like he never got his heyday as the guy that fights Captain America.
It's also weird that he was like asking Scarlett Johansson about it, because that means he believes it. It's not like it wasn't drunken boasting, like, I fought Captain America. Because then he's like, does he talk about me? Like, he was asking an honest question. So it's either he's crazy and believes his own nonsense, which is possible. I don't know. He's been in a Russian prison for however long. Or I don't know what the or is.
I mean, maybe he just assumes that Captain America knows who he is. Like,
oh, right.
He must know who I am because I'm the Russian him. Then
it all could have been fixed by making the flashback a beefier thing, because you know he could have been talking about how, you know, like he, you know who Captain America is. He was alive in the 40s, right? He was like he was America's super soldier in the 40s, right? So like, you know, he could have talked about how, oh, I wish now that I'm a super soldier, I wish that I could have faced, you know, America on that stage or whatever it was. And then like in the story that they were currently telling, then like he must know that Captain America is unfrozen and that he's been in prison this whole time. You know, like I think the Captain America thing could have been a bigger, funnier bit and could have played more into the, you know, into the character, into the reasons the character made choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're 100% right. If that flashback scene had been more, and like I said, there was room for that in this movie. Like, this movie wasn't like super packed. They could have expanded on that, included Nick Fury and Clint Barton, or even just Clint, and you know, had Nick Fury on the phone, whatever. That's fine. Right. But yeah, showed us her defecting. Tell us more of the story and make that add on to more reasons why other characters did the things that they did. It is kind of a missed opportunity.
I think the other thing that they if they had the opportunity of doing a bigger flashback like that, it also could have served Taskmaster, because you know, I think that like what you described was cool because Taskmaster watched the way the Avengers fought and mimicked it. So if you were a hardcore fan of these movies and could remember, you know, the way people fought in different movies, then you were seeing that play out on screen, and that was like sort of a cool Easter egg for you. What you didn't see a lot was Taskmaster being able to copy a thing that she just learned.
Yeah.
And you kind of saw it that once on the bridge, and it was like, it was one of the coolest moments, because you know, there's this like, who are you, why are you here type thing, and through Taskmaster's eyes you're seeing like all these like weird data points and like taking in the information, and then they both flip up at the same time in the same way. And it was so cool. If we had more of that, it would have served Taskmaster better. If there was stuff that Taskmaster could have learned in a flashback, could have observed about Hawkeye or Black Widow when she fought them, she fought them, then you know, I'm making up a continuity where Taskmaster is not the daughter of the guy, but you know, if they wanted to use Taskmaster in a different way, that could have been cool.
If they'd fleshed it out more, I was sure we were going to get an Agent Coulson bit in here, and we didn't, because I thought more of it was going to be set in the past. And I just like Agent Coulson. He was enjoyable in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I loved it when he showed up in Miss Marvel. It was great. Mm-hmm. And I knew we were going at least partially into the past here. I actually thought more. I thought this movie going into it. I thought the movie was going to be all about. I thought it was going to be basically all about Budapest. I thought it was going to be about Black Widow's transformation from Russian spy to, good guy spy.
Yeah.
So I was sure we were getting Agent Coulson, and then
Instead, we got an explanation of why she was wearing that vest in.
They did explain
because we really wanted to know. Like we were all wondering, where'd she get that vest?
I never thought about that vest. I never needed backstory for that vest. But Yelena's lines about it were hilarious. Like that, that actress and that character were amazing. You know, I loved how she was like, "It's so cool, right? You could put all this stuff in it." Like,
so many pockets.
She was so good.
Yeah, I was a big fan of. This would be a cool way to die. That was spectacular.
I like how she just got pissed off and took that rocket launcher and like shot it at that tower. Like.
No, it was a great movie. I mean, all the Marvel movies are great movies.
Yeah, the only problems with this movie are its missed potential, but judged on its own merits, just as a movie on its own, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's one of the things that made it hard to, I don't know, like really hard to rate this movie and pick it apart, because at this point, like, all the Marvel movies should be kind of amazing, right? Well, like, I mean, I'm not saying that they should all, like, each one should top the next and that they should all be the best movie, right? Like, I don't think that's how they have to work. I think that, when you have the big team-up movies, you're expecting a spectacle. Mm-hmm. But when, you have a movie about an individual character, you can just tell the story. But I'm saying, from a technical proficiency standpoint, we're talking about Marvel Studios with all of the resources and money and all of the, like, huge cast of stars that they have at their disposal. Like, you already expect a certain caliber of thing, like, as far as the cast and the fight scenes and the big set pieces and stuff like that. Like, you know that you're seeing a thing like that. So I think sometimes you're then tricked into thinking that it's better than it was, I think that because this movie felt like a little bit of an afterthought, some of that missed potential is very much in the forefront for me. When, if I was a kid who didn't watch this now, but dived into these movies a couple years from now and was like, oh, let's check out what this one is, I probably would think it's as good as any other one because it has all the cool Marvel things as all the other ones.
It does. It just occurred to me now that this does serve, I think, as a better intro point for the Yelena character than Age of Ultron did for Wanda. Like, Wanda always felt like such a weird kind of afterthought to me in most of the movies. Like, I just never really cared about her and Vision all that much. Just their origins didn't really stick with me, or at least their first appearances. Like, they didn't carry enough weight. Until WandaVision, really, was when I started really caring about those characters, because that's where I started really seeing their potential. Whereas introducing Yelena here, I'm very interested to see where she pops up next. So I don't take that for what it's worth.
No, I agree with you, especially on that WandaVision thing. I think where they missed it, and again, my guess is it just got edited down, was the Civil War movie when you saw Wanda and Vision hanging out in the wherever it was together before Wanda goes off and Vision's trying to stop her. But like there was one or two quick scenes with them, and I think WandaVision did a good job of filling some of that in. Mm-hmm. But I think in there, if you had and it's tough with the big team up movies, you got so many characters you're dealing with. I think we needed like 3 or 4 more minutes of those two starting to bond. And yeah. I think it would have gone a long way to making you care more about their characters in the preceding movies where they were important. I mean, there was a whole big, that was the whole big thing in Infinity War was, that whole end piece was based on Vision.
But like catching up with them in the beginning of Infinity War, like, okay, well, they're there, and I'm not sure I really care. And I remember at the end of Infinity War, watching it in the theaters, like, as the characters are all being dusted, like, each one was like an audience reaction, like, oh no, and then Wanda disappeared, and it was like one guy in the background, like, no one cared that she was gone, and that's kind of a bummer because she's, especially as we've seen now in WandaVision, she really is, like, she's a very capable actor, and she's a really interesting character. She's just been super underserved so far.
Yeah,
and I think that they've done a better job of introducing. They did a good job of introducing Yelena, because I don't feel that with her. I feel invested in that character and not like it's like she's this afterthought.
Well, Age of Ultron was weird, and I think Kris saw me get into some internet discussion with somebody about it.
Yeah, you were talking to Jared about that.
Yeah, it's not that I don't like the movie. It's it's the same thing. It's like all of these movies are going to be technically proficient and are going to have like cool stuff about them that you remember, and so like I thought Age of Ultron was a lot of individual stuff that was really cool, that was connected together with things that didn't make a lot of sense, like Wanda puts the idea of Ultron in Tony's head to, like, you know what I mean? Like there was some goofy stuff, but you needed Age of Ultron for everything that came after it. It introduced a lot of characters. It was sort of the right, like, second step to be an Avengers movie, right? Because you had them in the beginning. It was all really deliberate that you had an Iron Man 2, and then Thor movie, and then a Captain America movie, and all this stuff was building to the Avengers. And some of these smaller movies had to introduce other people for the team, like Hawkeye and Black Widow. They also had to introduce a villain for the so when you got to the Avengers movie, we already knew who Loki was. It was all really pieced together well, and they were setting up some of this Infinity Stone stuff, but really they were just thinking one step ahead to the next, to the big team up movie. I think Age of Ultron is where you see it fall apart a little bit. Like you see that they hadn't figured out how to be super cohesive at that point.
Yeah, there was a lot of great stuff, but it's just that it wasn't extraordinarily well executed. Like it's an extremely important movie. Like as far as the things that happen in it are super. It's a really pivotal chapter in all of this. But the overall execution of that movie, I completely agree with you. It is fairly low on my list as well.
I think you see that it comes right after Iron Man 3, where like Iron Man is like, I'm going to take a break and lose the suit for a while. And then the next thing, like the movie starts with him in the suit. I think it was after Winter Soldier where like, I think they were like, yes, S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to get rid of these helicarriers because they were compromised with the Hydra thing and blah, blah, blah. And then like, there's Nick Fury on a helicarrier. Like there was even though they were thinking a couple steps ahead, they hadn't figured out how to connect this stuff, and everything after Age of Ultron was much, much, much better at that.
And they also completely threw away Strucker. Like, just completely threw away Baron von Strucker. Like, killed off screen and everything. Like, yikes.
It's tough when you're taking... So, I don't know how I feel about it for the MCU, because you've got 4 million characters to choose from. So, while I do hate it, my initial reaction is, don't do that. You can't just kill somebody off like that. And then at the same time, I'm like, are they ever really going to come back to him? They got like 50 other good Avengers villains that they haven't gotten to yet. In my lifetime, are they going to get to a movie where they're cycling back and going to themselves, damn, I wish we hadn't killed off von Strucker. It's just, I don't know. I'm not going to be alive to see it, Kris. I'm not going to be alive.
Well, we've been at this for quite a while. Do we have anything else in particular we want to dissect about the Black Widow movie? I mean, I think we've touched on pretty much all of it. Liked all the performances. I like the movie overall. I love the MCU overall, and it's been God, can you imagine if this was happening when we were kids? Like every time I think about the MCU and just how completely ridiculously awesome this is, like flaws and all, like it's definitely not perfect. You know, you've got weird stuff like in the Incredible Hulk movie, and there were definitely some growing pains, but geez, the fact that this is as good as it is just nuts to me.
It's yeah. Again, I think back to what I watched when I was a kid. There was that '90s Captain America movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard to sit through. But as a kid, I was like, "It's a Captain America movie. It's on the screen. It's right there." You know, it was. The
idea of your movies like interacting with like this was unheard of. You know.
Oh, forget about it.
Tim Burton's Batman was never going to interact with a Superman of any flavor. It was just, well, here's Batman. This is
say thank you and move on.
Yeah, this is what you get.
Yeah, no. We could do a whole one of these about talking about the DC universe and all the things that they've done wrong.
DC universe just makes me sad.
I know.
Because we're watching Justice League with the kids right now. We're watching the old Justice League cartoon with the kids right now. And it's so easy. This could very easily be done very well.
The characters are there. It's not like the DC universe. It's not like they fail at like. It's not like when we were kids and they couldn't pull off costumes and special effects.
Yeah.
No, everybody's got that down. Everybody's proficient as hell at it. It's fine. You can make it look however you want to make it look. It's just, I think they got in a little late and they saw what Marvel was doing. They were like, we want to be there. And
they want to be there, and they want to be the success of Christopher Nolan Batman movies at the same time. And they're like, Zack Snyder, you're the worst person for this job. You do it. And then he did. And because me and Karen just rewatched, just on a complete lark, we rewatched Batman Begins. Because Karen was like, we've watched a lot of Justice League, and it's been reminding me of how much I like Batman. We should watch a Batman movie. So we watched Batman Begins. And that movie holds up great.
It's a great movie.
It's a fantastic movie.
It's a great movie.
And then we're both sitting there like, man, how did they screw this up? Like, they really looked at this and said, well, this was really popular. We should do this, but with the Justice League. It's like, but every member of the Justice League isn't Batman. This tone works for Batman, just like, the Joe Johnson tone worked for the 1940s Captain America, and the Russo brothers worked for Winter Soldier, or whichever one they did. Like
the Russo brothers did Winter Soldier, Civil War, and then Infinity War and Endgame, which was great to have the continuity of them for those 4 movies.
And then James Gunn brought his flavor to Guardians, which
like,
was perfect.
They have to have that really unique personality, but also have a through line that connects them all. And with the DCEU, it's just like, no, man, let's make Superman edgy. Let's make everyone really angsty and angry and dark.
Well, I think that's a totally different podcast. All the sins that they did with Superman, because none of what they created is what makes Superman endearing. But no, part of the problem with the DC universe is that the year that the first Avengers movie came out, 2012, was also the same year that Dark Knight Rises came out. So DC was trying to use that as the springboard into their universe, and Christopher Nolan was like, no, I'm done, man. Like, I made my 3 movies. They're 3 complete movies, and that's it.
I'm tapping out. You got to start from scratch.
And they were great.
Yeah.
I like the third one. Some people get that. I mean, the first 2 were better, but I like the third one. I thought it was good.
I like the third one, too.
I like it, too. I haven't seen it in forever. I'm looking forward to rewatching it sometime, because I haven't seen it since, I think, the theater. But I remember rather liking it. Again, I agree. I don't think it's as good as the first 2, but, I mean, it's a pretty damn high bar. So.
It's a hugely high bar, right, yeah. I mean, just like this Black Widow movie, if I had to rank it, is it going to be in the top 5 Marvel movies? No, it's not. No. But it's almost all home runs.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is hanging out with some of the lower ones. Like on my personal list, it's definitely towards the bottom. but it's on a bottom of list. It's a bottom of a list of movies that I love every single one of them.
Right.
Like when I'm looking at my list that I was figuring out trying to rank, the only thing I actively don't really enjoy is season 1 of Iron Fist.
Oh! You're counting the TV.
Yeah, I was counting the TV series too. It's like, yeah, it's season 1 of Iron Fist. Literally everything else. What was your guess going to be?
When we were just talking the movies, I was like, which movie does he not like? I was going to go Thor 2. I
love Thor 2.
Do you?
I like that movie more than most people do.
I was going to say, a lot of people give it a hard time. I enjoy it, but I kind of get the complaints about Thor 2 a little bit. That or Hulk, I think are the two slowest ones for me. That it like, there's just some downtime in them.
Yeah, there's some downtime in them. The portal
I
fight
like
at
them.
the end with Malekith is genius.
It is. I like the movies. If I had to rank all the MCU movies, those two would be towards the bottom of the list.
Yeah, they definitely go towards the bottom. Same with Incredible Hulk. I rather enjoy that movie, but it really feels disconnected from the rest of the MCU too, especially with the Edward Norton thing.
I haven't seen Thor 2 in a while. I feel like I would have to watch it to know exactly where I would, exactly how much I did or didn't like it. But I mean, I remember it being fine. Again, like even the worst of these is pretty good.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people give Iron Man 2 a bad rap, and I kind of like that movie.
I think Iron Man 2 is, that's another one that I don't understand. Like people rag on that movie hard, and I don't know. We just Karen and I did an MCU rewatch last year before we finished it up right before WandaVision hit earlier this year. And like when we got to Iron Man 2, it's like this is great.
I had a good time with that.
What did you want? They introduced Black Widow in that movie, right?
Yeah, they introduced Black Widow in that movie. I understand. Like again, it comes from a lot of people's like preconceived expectations of like you didn't do Whiplash enough service. Like, okay, but I don't know Whiplash from a hole in the wall in the comics. I don't know his personality.
We're talking about.
He was great.
I mean, I don't know the numbers, but there's got to be 1,000 nameable Marvel villains. You burn through Whiplash. He's not in the top 50. He's not in the top 100. Right? There's 100 bigger Marvel villains than Whiplash. It's all right.
Like, and Justin Hammer was fantastic in that movie. He's so much fun to watch. No, I think that movie's great. And Don Cheadle is just a way better War Machine, I think, too.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Yeah. The other guy was too flat. I can't remember that other.
Terrence Howard.
Yeah,
no, Terrence Howard did
I've
not
seen
do
him
it
in things
for me.
that I like, Terrence Howard, but for War Machine, I don't think he popped off.
Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah, it all worked out in the end. So, all right, overall, everyone's giving this one a thumbs up.
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah. I'll give it a thumbs up.
Good, not a bad movie.
Again, as I watched it the second time, I feel like I was able to appreciate it for what it was. I guess I'll say one more thing about it. You sort of asked if we had any other thoughts about it, and I don't know. I think one of the best things about the movie is is this sort of like unlikely family story, that of course all of these all of these people that are sort of like raised to have like no allegiances and no family ties and no nothing that could compromise them, that they would sort of like find family in this like sort of like fake thing that they had to do for a couple years, this undercover mission, and like I think the stuff about it that is most successful is when those ties to that family is the thing that is more important than the mission or whatever the thing is. Makes it really cool. And Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh that played Elena were both like had amazing moments with that. Yelena's conversation with David Harbour with Red Guardian. You know, like it. I thought she was so amazing that little stretch of time was so important to her. You know what I mean? That like that was the thing that she always thought was her family. Yeah, like to me that was the best part of the movie. Like when I go back and I like pick it apart, like that's the thing that's most successful about it to me.
Well said.
Indeed.
All right, then that's the note that we are going to end on. That is going to be our show. As a reminder to everyone, our homework is Crank, starring Jason Statham. So if you want to watch along, have at it. I'm excited.
Me too. Me too.
All right, everyone. A theater near you is a part of the Geekade Podcast Network. And if you'd like to get in touch with us to share your comments, movie suggestions, or whatever, you can send us an email at mail@geekade.com. We can also be found on most social media outlets and the official Geekade Discord server, all of which can be found in our show notes. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time in a theater near you.